So last time we dug into the cognitive machinery of thinking, the pure analysis. But what happens when that engine just stalls? Well, today we're jumping into stage 3, and this is where things get really fascinating. We're moving beyond the brain and into a world that integrates the powerful and, let's be honest, often overlooked tools of emotion and intuition. This is where thinking becomes a full-body sport.
Here's the map for our journey today. First, we're going to draw a really important line in the sand between a thought and the act of thinking. Then we'll push our minds to the absolute creative edge with something called the generative frame. From there, we take a big leap. We leave the purely mental world behind and learn how to drop into the body. And of course, we'll have to talk about how to work with the doubt and fear that always show up. Finally, we'll see this whole thing not as a neat and tidy solution, but as a living, breathing, and always unfinished conversation.
All right, let's dive in. To really get what this next stage is all about, we have to start with a really fundamental distinction. We need to separate the stuff in our heads, the content, from the way our minds actually work with all that stuff, the process.
Here's a simple way to picture it. A single thought is like a brick. It's just one static thing, an idea, a fact, a memory. But thinking is the builder. Thinking is the dynamic process of grabbing those bricks, stacking them, comparing them, and actually building something new. See, you can have a million bricks, but without the builder, all you've got is a pile of rubble.
Okay, so once you get that difference, it opens the door to what might be the most advanced tool in the purely cognitive toolbox. This is the thing that really bridges the gap between just shuffling old ideas around and creating something totally new. It's what we call the generative frame.
And listen, this is way more than just reframing something in a positive light. No, generative framing is about asking a question so powerful, so open, that it literally creates a new playground for your mind to explore. It's like you're not just looking through a new lens, you're actually creating the lens itself. But even this incredible tool has its limits, because at the end of the day, it's still just your mind doing the work.
Which brings us to a really critical question, right? What happens when you're just plain stuck? When all the analysis, all the modeling, and even your best attempts at creative framing just aren't cutting it? What do you do when the way forward can't be thought up?
And this, right here, is where stage 3 really kicks in. This is the big pivot. It's about shifting from trying to think our way out of a jam to actually sensing our way forward. We're deliberately moving away from those well-worn cognitive paths and into a much more embodied, intuitive process. The invitation here is to just drop into the body.
The philosopher Eugene Gendlin actually gave this a name. He called it the felt sense. You know this feeling. It's that vague, physical, not quite words awareness you get about a person or a situation. It's the something feels off here in your gut, or the this just feels right in your chest. That's it. That's the felt sense. It's this holistic bodily knowing that holds way more information than our conscious mind can usually grab onto.
This quote just nails the shift perfectly. It's about pulling your attention away from all the little thoughts about the problem and instead turning toward the direct sensory experience of the whole thing. You stop trying to analyze all the pieces on the board and you start to just feel the shape of the game itself.
Arnold Mindell's idea of essence work kind of takes this even deeper. So if the felt sense is about listening to the body's subtle signals, essence work is about dropping right into the very heart of the challenge. It's about getting past all the stories and the surface-level details to feel its core nature. To really ask, deep down, what is this thing really about?
Now, you can't do this kind of deep, intuitive work in a cold, rigid state of mind. It just doesn't work. It requires what we call meta-skills. These are qualities of the heart that create the right conditions. Things like compassion for yourself when you're struggling, a sense of playfulness so you don't get too tight, and just a radical openness to whatever comes up. These aren't just nice-to-haves. They are the actual soil you need for these deeper insights to grow.
Okay, but let's be real. The second you step off that well-lit path of logic and analysis, other things are going to show up. Doubt, uncertainty, even fear. They're pretty much guaranteed to make an appearance. So, how does this whole embodied approach deal with them? Do we just try to power through?
Here's the radical part. The approach isn't to fight these feelings or pretend they're not there. The first and most important step is to completely reframe your relationship with them. What if doubt and fear aren't bugs in the system? What if they're actually features of any real creative process? They're just signs that you're in new territory. So the goal isn't to get rid of them, it's to learn how to be with them.
David Hawkins offers a really powerful practice for this, and it's all built on this idea of non-resistance. It's pretty simple. First, you just acknowledge the feeling is there. You just see it. Then you name it, but without any judgment. Just, this is fear, or hello, doubt. Third, you just allow it to be there in your body. You don't push it away. And finally, and this is the real game changer, you surrender the need to change it. You just let it be. And the craziest thing happens. When you stop fighting it, its grip on you starts to loosen all by itself.
So, as we start to wind down here, it is so important to get this one thing. What we've been talking about is not a 5-step formula for the perfect answer. This isn't about reaching some state of mastery or finally arriving. This is a practice. It's an ongoing, messy, living process. This entire journey of thinking, especially when you start weaving in these deeper, embodied layers, is fundamentally iterative. It circles back. It unfolds in surprising ways. It's a relationship you're building, and it's never truly finished. And in a way, this explainer is exactly the same. It's just one piece of a much bigger conversation that's always, always in motion.
So, we're going to leave you not with an answer, but with an invitation. A question for you to carry with you into your own work, your own life. After everything we've touched on, from the logic of generative frames to the deep wisdom of the felt sense, what is the question that truly wants to live through you now?